The massacre at Station Theta 7. Station Theta 7 had always been a symbol of peace in the Outer Rim. The massive structure floated in neutral space, where 5 different star systems met. Traders from dozens of species gathered here to exchange goods, share stories, and build relationships across the stars. The station held 50,000 beings from 20 different civilizations. Children played in the recreation sectors, while merchants haggled over prices in the market districts. Scientists collaborated in research laboratories. Artists displayed their work in cultural centers. Commander Arya Chun stood in the observation deck, watching ships come and go. She had managed this station for 8 years. In that time, she had seen disputes resolved peacefully, friendships formed across species barriers, and prosperity spread throughout the region. The station represented everything good about this Galactic Federation. The attack came without warning. Arya was reviewing supply manifests when the first explosion shook the station. Emergency alarms screamed through every corridor. She ran to the command center and pulled up the security feeds. Her blood turned cold. Ships bearing the crimson markings of the Krell Dominion had breached the outer docking bays. Heavily armed raiders poured into the station like a flood of death. The Krell were massive beings, standing nearly 9 feet tall with thick armored hides and 4 powerful arms. Their culture glorified violence and conquest. They had terrorized the Outer Rim for decades, but always struck isolated colonies and transport vessels. Never a major station like this. The Krell moved through the corridors with terrible efficiency. They weren't just attacking. They were hunting. Arya watched in horror as they herded civilians into central locations. Families were torn apart. Those who resisted were killed immediately. Those who complied were held at gunpoint, while the Krell planted explosives throughout the station. Arya activated the emergency beacon. Her hands shook as she sent out the distress call to the Galactic Federation. Then she switched to the internal communication system. Her voice echoed through every speaker on the station. "This is Commander Chun. We are under attack. All security personnel report to your designated stations. All civilians proceed to the emergency shelters. Stay calm. Help is coming." But Arya knew the truth. Help would take days to arrive. By then, the Krell would have taken what they wanted and disappeared into the lawless regions of space. This was their pattern. Strike hard, demand ransom, collect their payment, and vanish before military forces could respond. The Krell leader called himself Warlord Krax. He was a veteran raider who had orchestrated dozens of attacks. He appeared on every screen throughout the station, his 4 arms spread wide in a gesture of dominance. His translator device rendered his growling speech into Galactic Common. "Creatures of the Federation, you are now prisoners of the Krell Dominion. Your station contains valuable resources we require. Your governments will pay us 10,000 cargo containers of refined metals, 50 starships, and safe passage through all Federation space. You have 72 hours. Every 6 hours that passes without payment, we will execute 100 hostages. We will broadcast each execution so the galaxy can watch your governments abandon you." The screen went dark. Then it came back on, showing a large open area where the Krell had gathered 1,000 civilians. Arya recognized the central market plaza. Families huddled together in terror. Children cried while their parents tried to comfort them. The Krell guards laughed and shoved their weapons into the backs of anyone who moved. Arya felt helpless rage burning through her. She had trained for many scenarios, but not this. Station Theta 7 had minimal security forces. They were equipped to handle disputes and accidents, not a military invasion. Her small team of guards had been overwhelmed in minutes. 15 light-years away, the Galactic Federation Council convened in emergency session. The chamber held representatives from 47 member species. They had been discussing trade agreements when the distress call arrived. Now the screens showed live feeds from Station Theta-7. The council chamber erupted in panicked voices. Representatives shouted over each other, demanding action, suggesting strategies, calculating costs. This was their standard response. The Federation had maintained peace for centuries through diplomacy and compromise. They had never developed a significant military because they believed violence was primitive and unnecessary. Ambassador Telkin of the Vryn Federation stood at his podium. His blue-scaled hands gestured emphatically. We must negotiate immediately. Calculate the cost of their demands. Begin gathering the resources. We save lives through peaceful resolution. Council Speaker Morth clicked his mandibles in agreement. This is standard protocol. The Krell have made similar demands before. We pay the tribute. They release the hostages. Everyone survives. It is the civilized approach. Ambassador Jorvax of the Centauran Alliance nodded vigorously. Agreed. We cannot risk 50,000 lives. Begin the negotiation process. Show the Krell we are reasonable beings who value life above material resources. The Council began the familiar routine, calculating how much each member world would contribute, drafting formal responses, preparing tribute convoys. This was how the Federation had always handled raiders and pirates. Payment was cheaper than conflict. Lives were saved through appeasement. But in the back section of the chamber, human Ambassador James Morrison sat perfectly still. His weathered face showed no emotion. His gray eyes watched the screens without blinking. He had been Earth's representative for 5 years. In that time, he had learned to navigate the Federation's complex political structure. He had made friends among other ambassadors. He had successfully negotiated favorable trade. Agreements for humanity. But watching the Krell murder innocent beings while demanding payment made something cold and hard settle in his chest. Ambassador Morrison. Council Speaker. Morth's voice interrupted his thoughts. Humanity holds observer status in this matter, as Station Theta-7 includes human merchants and researchers. What is Earth's position on the proposed tribute? Every eye in the chamber turned toward him. Humans were still relative newcomers to galactic society. First contact had occurred only 40 years ago. Humanity had been welcomed warmly. They were known for their creativity, their emotional depth, their remarkable adaptability. They built efficient ships and composed beautiful music. They seemed eager to learn and cooperate. James stood slowly. His voice was quiet, but carried clearly through the chamber. Earth requires 72 hours to consult with our government before making any commitments regarding tribute or negotiation. Ambassador Tulkin's face showed confusion. 72 hours? The Krell are executing hostages every 6 hours. We must begin negotiations immediately. Then I suggest you begin your negotiations, James said calmly. Earth will provide its answer in 72 hours. He sat down and closed his eyes. His fingers moved to a small communication device embedded in his wrist. He entered a priority code that had never been used before. A code that would activate protocols most humans didn't know existed. On Earth, in classified military facilities, hidden deep beneath mountains and oceans, alarms began to sound. Sealed doors opened. Equipment that hadn't been activated in 40 years came online. Men and women in uniform moved with practiced urgency. Humanity had joined the Galactic Federation with genuine hopes for peace. They had shared technology and culture freely. They had built friendships and alliances. They had seemed to embrace the Federation's philosophy of nonviolence, but humanity had learned hard lessons during their own violent history. They had fought brutal wars. They had survived genocides and terrorism. They had developed rules written in blood and pain. One rule stood above all others: never negotiate with those who murder innocents. Never reward violence against civilians. Never teach killers that their methods work. Asterisk. The Federation had forgotten how to fight because they had enjoyed peace for so long. They had never faced an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with or bought off. They had never needed to develop the capacity for overwhelming violence. Humanity remembered. And humanity had prepared. Back on Station Theta 7, Commander Arya Chun coordinated what little resistance her security team could manage. They had managed to secure 3 sectors and evacuate 2,000 civilians to reinforced shelters. But the Krell controlled most of the station. Time was running out. 6 hours after the attack began, Warlord Krax appeared on the screens again. He stood in the market plaza surrounded by his warriors. 100 hostages knelt before him in a line. Their hands were bound. Their faces showed terror and resignation. Federation, your time is up. No payment has arrived. No negotiations have begun. So we will demonstrate our seriousness. What happened next would be broadcast across the entire galaxy. Every world with communication technology would see it. The images would haunt billions of beings. Children would have nightmares. Diplomats would weep. And somewhere in humanity's hidden military installations, soldiers would watch with cold fury. The massacre lasted 10 minutes. When it ended, 100 beings lay dead in the market plaza. Warlord Krax smiled into the camera, his teeth stained with blood. 66 hours remain. We await your payment. The screen went dark dot in the Federation Council chamber. Representatives sat in stunned silence. Some wept openly. Others stared at blank screens in shock. This level of brutality was beyond their experience. They had read about violence in historical texts, but witnessing it live was different. Ambassador Morrison stood and walked to the center of the chamber. His face was calm, but something burned in his eyes. Something ancient and implacable. The tribute will not be necessary, he said quietly. Every representative turned to stare at him. What do you mean? Council Speaker Morth's voice trembled. James met his gaze steadily. Earth does not negotiate with terrorists. We do not pay tribute to murderers. We do not reward violence against innocent beings. We end it. How? Ambassador Telkin's voice was almost a whisper. They have hostages. They have explosives throughout the station. One wrong move and everyone dies. James Morrison smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator that had found its prey. We're going to show the galaxy what happens when someone makes the mistake of harming civilians in front of humanity. We're going to teach the Krell a lesson they will never forget. And we're going to do it in a way that ensures no one ever tries this again. He pressed a button on his communicator. 3 words that would change galactic history forever. Send the wolves. Asterisk 3 unmarked ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Theta 7 system. They were sleek and dark, built from materials that absorbed sensor scans. No registry markings. No identification beacons. They moved through space like shadows, invisible to standard detection systems. These were not the civilian vessels, the galaxy associated with humanity. These were something else entirely. Something humanity had kept hidden for 4 decades. On the lead ship, Captain Sarah Reeves stood on the bridge studying the tactical display. She was 45 years old, with close-cropped gray hair and eyes that had seen too much combat. Before first contact with aliens, she had served in the United Nations Special Operations Command during the corporate wars. She had retired when humanity joined the Federation. Believing her skills would never be needed again, she had been wrong. Status report, she said quietly. Lieutenant Marcus Webb worked the sensor station. We have positive identification on Station Theta 7. Krell forces control. approximately 70% of the structure. Estimate 400 Krell warriors. Approximately 49,000 hostages in various locations. Station defenses are offline. The Krell have planted explosives at 14 critical junctions. Sarah nodded. Infiltration teams? Ready for deployment. All 150 operators are prepared. Equipment checks complete. Sarah studied the station layout on her screen. The Krell had positioned themselves well. They controlled the main corridors and held hostages in locations that made direct assault impossible. Any conventional military force would face a massacre trying to retake the station. But her teams weren't conventional military. They were the wolves. Special operations soldiers trained for impossible scenarios. Each operator had spent years mastering zero-gravity combat, precision shooting, and hostage rescue. They represented humanity's capacity for controlled, surgical violence. Begin infiltration, Sarah ordered. Silent approach. No contact until all teams are in position. Small pods detached from the 3 ships. Each pod held 5 operators in advanced combat suits. The suits masked their heat signatures and absorbed radar. The pods drifted toward the station using minimal propulsion, appearing on sensors as nothing more than debris. On Station Theta 7, Commander Arya Chun received an encrypted communication on a frequency she didn't recognize. A human voice spoke calmly. Commander Chun, this is Captain Reeves of Earth Special Operations. We are initiating rescue operations. Keep your people away from Krell positions for the next 2 hours. Arya felt hope surge through her chest. Captain, there are explosives throughout the station. If they detonate, we're aware, Sarah interrupted. We've mapped every explosive device. Bomb disposal teams will neutralize them simultaneously. Trust us, Commander. We've done this before. The communication ended. Arya stared at her console in disbelief. Earth had military forces capable of this kind of operation? The peaceful, artistic humans who built beautiful starships and composed touching symphonies had soldiers trained for hostage rescue? She remembered a conversation she'd had years ago with a human engineer named David. He had been helping upgrade the station's life support systems. During a break, she had asked him about Earth's history. He had grown quiet and said something she hadn't understood at the time. Humans are really good at 2 things, Commander: creating beautiful art and waging terrible war. We prefer the art, but we never forget how to do the war. Now she understood. The infiltration pods attached to the station's hull at 30 different points. Operators cut through the outer plating, silently using molecular disassemblers that left no trace. They moved through maintenance tunnels and service ducts that the Krell didn't know existed. Within an hour, 150 human soldiers had positioned themselves throughout the station. In the market plaza, Warlord Krax prepared for another execution. 12 hours had passed since his first demonstration. The Federation had sent messages promising negotiation, but no tribute had arrived. It was time to show them he was serious. He selected 50 hostages at random. An elderly Vryn merchant, a young Centauran scientist, a Telkin family with 3 children. They were forced to kneel in a line while cameras broadcast the scene across the galaxy. Federation, Krax announced. You insult us with empty words. Where is our payment? Where is the tribute we demanded? Your delay costs lives. He raised one of his 4 arms, holding a massive blade. These 50 will die unless the lights went out. Emergency power failed. The entire station plunged into darkness. The Krell roared in confusion and anger. Hostages screamed. And in that moment of chaos, humanity struck. Night vision made the darkness irrelevant for the human operators. They could see the Krell highlighted in infrared. They could see the hostages marked with identification tags. They had practiced this scenario 1,000 times in simulations. Sergeant Jake Morrison led his team through the maintenance tunnel above the market plaza. He was Ambassador Morrison's nephew, though few people knew that connection. He had joined the Special Operations Forces at 18 and spent 15 years training for situations exactly like this. He positioned himself at a ceiling access panel, directly above Warlord Krax. Through his scope, he could see the Krell leader's heat signature. He could see the blade raised to kill. He could see the terrified hostages. All teams, report status. Captain Reeves' voice came through his earpiece. 30 team leaders reported ready simultaneously. Every Krell position had been identified. Every hostage location was mapped. Every explosive had a bomb disposal team assigned. Execute, Sarah ordered. Jake dropped through the ceiling panel, his weapon already aimed. He fired once. A specialized round designed to penetrate Krell armor struck Warlord Krax in the head. The massive alien fell without a sound. All around the plaza, human operators appeared from shadows, from ceiling panels, from floor access points. They moved with practiced coordination. Their weapons made soft clicking sounds as specialized ammunition found its targets. 30 Krell warriors dropped in 3 seconds. The hostages barely had time to react. One moment, they were about to die. The next, their captors were falling. Dark figures in advanced armor were pulling them to safety, guiding them toward emergency exits, speaking in calm voices. Asterisk, you're safe now. Follow the lights. Move quickly, but don't run. We've got you. The same scene played out in 14 locations across the station. Krell warriors found themselves facing enemies who moved like ghosts and shot with impossible accuracy. They tried to respond, tried to fight back, but the humans were always one step ahead. In the engineering section, a Krell squad leader grabbed his communicator. All units, we are under attack. Unknown force. They move in darkness. His message ended abruptly as a human operator's round found him. Bomb. Disposal teams worked with mechanical precision. They had identified every explosive device the Krell had planted. Using advanced scanning technology and specialized tools, they disarmed each bomb simultaneously. Within minutes, the Krell's leverage evaporated. The battle lasted 18 minutes. When the lights came back on, every Krell warrior on Station Theta-7 was dead. Not wounded, not captured, dead. The human operators had executed their mission with absolute efficiency. Captain Sarah Reeves walked through the market plaza, checking on the rescued hostages. Her operators were administering first aid and coordinating evacuation. She stopped in front of Commander Arya Chun. Station is secure, Commander. All hostages accounted for. 94% survival rate. I'm sorry we couldn't save everyone. Arya stared at the bodies of Krell warriors scattered across her station. She had watched the operation on security feeds. The precision, the coordination, the absolute ruthlessness. You killed all of them. Yes, Sarah said simply. We don't take prisoners from forces that murder civilians. We eliminate the threat completely. The Federation won't understand this, Arya whispered. They'll call it excessive. They'll say you should have captured them for trial. Sarah's expression didn't change. The Federation has enjoyed peace for so long, they've forgotten what real evil looks like. The Krell weren't soldiers fighting a war. They were murderers who enjoyed killing. You don't negotiate with that. You don't rehabilitate it. You end it. She looked at the rescued hostages being led to safety. Every one of these people is alive because we acted decisively. If we had waited for Federation negotiations, how many more would have died? Arya had no answer. 20 light-years away, the Galactic Federation Council watched the security feeds in stunned silence. They had witnessed something completely outside their experience. Military action, so precise it looked choreographed. Violence so controlled it became art, and humans doing it all without hesitation. Ambassador Telkin's voice shook. They killed 400 Krell. No trial. No chance for surrender. They just executed them. Ambassador Morrison stood and faced the council. The Krell murdered 100 innocent beings 6 hours into their attack. They were preparing to murder 50 more when we stopped them. How many more would they have killed while you negotiated? How many while you gathered tribute? How many while you transported payment? He paused, letting his words sink in. The Krell have terrorized the Outer Rim for decades because you taught them that murder works. You taught them that taking hostages gets them what they want. You created this situation by rewarding violence. Council Speaker Morith clicked his mandibles nervously. But Ambassador, violence in return for violence makes us no better than makes us survivors, Morrison interrupted. Makes us people who protect the innocent instead of sacrificing them for political convenience. The Federation has a choice now. Continue your policy of appeasement and watch the Krell and others like them grow bolder. Or stand with humanity and show the galaxy that murdering civilians has consequences. Before anyone could respond, alarm sounded throughout the council chamber. An aide rushed to Speaker Morith with an urgent message. The speaker's face went pale. A Krell war fleet has been detected. 300 ships. They're heading directly toward the human colony world of New Terra. Population, 2 million. They're broadcasting their intentions across all frequencies. They plan to destroy the entire colony in revenge for what happened at Station Theta 7. The council erupted in panic. 300 warships against a civilian colony world. It would be a massacre. Surely no humanity would see reason. Surely they would negotiate, evacuate, anything to avoid such devastating loss of life. Ambassador Morrison's expression didn't change. He had expected this. The Krell didn't understand deterrence. They only understood strength. They thought attacking a human colony would show the galaxy that humanity could be. Intimidated thought they were about to learn how wrong they were. Morrison activated his communicator and spoke 3 words that would reshape galactic politics forever. Activate the fleet. Across human space, hidden military installations came online. Ships that had been disguised as cargo haulers shed their false exteriors. Defense platforms concealed in asteroid fields revealed their true purpose. Weapons that had been classified as theoretical research were loaded and armed. The Krell thought they were hunting prey. They were about to discover they had walked into a trap. Humanity was done hiding its teeth. The galaxy was about to witness what happened when you threatened human civilians. The age of appeasement was over. The age of consequences had begun. Asterisk,